Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Cinema A to B. Finally, Ben and I get to open up our talking about Andor Season 2, because guess what? We're talking about Andor Season 2. It's very exciting. So Ben and I have been kind of wanting to talk about this as the episodes have released and constantly telling ourselves, no, we can't say anything. You can't say anything. Like reminding each other, like, hey, we got to save it for the podcast. So today, the floodgates are open, Ben. We get to talk about Andor Season 2. So we are talking this about 2 weeks after the last three episodes drops, episodes 10, 11, and 12. And Ben, I have one serious question right up front for you, because we talked about this early on, like last year in 2023, is the writer's strike happened right as Season 2 was filming. And so Tony Gilroy wasn't on set for pretty much the majority of the filming of this. He was in for some of the post-production and some of the editing, but he really wasn't there for the actual filming. And you thought, you wondered whether or not that was going to hurt Season 2. And were we going to get a lesser product because of that? So my question to you, Ben, after watching the season, reminisce back on that. How did it come out? How do you feel?
So it's twofold. First off, I don't think that had a huge impact on the show. I think the episodes are specifically written enough ahead of time that I don't think that a show like this lived or died on that. Mm-hmm. But to part two of the query, this just isn't as good a season for me as season one.
Wow.
And
okay.
It's not, and I don't think it's particularly close. The thing for me is that, but it's not all bad news, because I think they really, really stuck the landing. Mm-hmm. But I have serious issues with the first third of season 2. And I'll tell you what it boils down to for me.
Okay.
The first 4 to 5 episodes, Cassian is a guest star in his own series. And I have huge issues with that. And I think it could have been handled a little bit differently. I won't get too much into the 1-year jumps. I'm not a fan of it, mm-hmm. but I understand the practical reasons for doing so. We were never going to get 5 seasons of this. I didn't really even want 5 seasons of this show. I maybe wanted 3 seasons of this show, if I'm like reflecting back on what we got for season 2. Don't get me wrong, I really like the season. I'm very happy with it. But in its totality, I think it's a far cry from season 1, mm-hmm. from episode 1 to the final episode of the first season. Now, it may have high points that equate stuff in season 1 or maybe best it, but as a whole product, I'm not there. I really like it, but I'm honestly not in love with it. For what I said, the first I'd say four episodes, other than the intro, Cassian feels like Mando in Mandalorian season 3. He feels like a secondary character or a third tertiary character in his own show. Mm-hmm. I have real issues with this, especially when I'm expected to be brought up to Rogue One.
Yeah.
Now they course correct. They do course correct, and Cassian doesn't feel like a secondary character at about the midpoint on. And as you go, they rectify it. But man, I was struggling. Like, other than that, the opening of episode 1, season 2 was fantastic. Mm-hmm. And I enjoy the Mon Mothma stuff, but it got a little long in the tooth for me. It really did. For a character that, shows up in Return of the Jedi, I love the actress. I like what they did with the character. I feel like she stole time from Cassian. And I felt like they did stuff like on Ghorman. They did the same thing. They spent all that time with secondary characters and basically made them main characters in episodes on Ghorman. And I was like, not really enjoying this. So, but I digress. In the end, it didn't matter as much, because by episode 7, 8 on, I'm fully vested. They course correct. Cassian's the lead guy again, and I'm on board. And we can get into the rest of it. But I'm curious in your thoughts, because I don't think we're on the same page with this. Because I was thinking we wouldn't be. Mm-hmm. And I was kind of holding it back. I was like, we're going to have a divergent opinion on this season. But I'm really interested to what your kind of initial impression was.
Sure. Well, and it doesn't come too much of a surprise because I can remember one-off comment you said after episodes 4, 5, and 6 dropped, and you watched them, and you basically were just like, "I'm really waiting for the meat and potatoes." So like they're really light on them, or something that was like they were light on the meat and potatoes, kind of scenario. And so I kind of was like, okay, I could see that. I could see that. And then I think I quipped after you watched 7, 8, and 9. I was like, was that enough meat and potatoes for you? Kind of a situation.
Right.
But we are different on this. So I love this show, and this season for me felt like it was still firing all cylinders. There was still a lot of subtext. Some of the dialogue in this season was even better than season 1 in a lot of ways. And I understood. I was watching them pretty soon after the episodes dropped. And yes, especially the first 3 episodes do feel a little bit longer. There's not as much that is happening. You are kind of catching up with these characters a year later. And I totally agree. I totally understand where you're coming from, that Andor is a secondary character in his own show. I have less of a problem with that, but we're following characters or situations that having read a lot of the EU books, Mon Mothma's huge in that. So it's fun to kind of see where she's building. So like for me, she's not a secondary character. She is a primary character, even though this is a show called Andor. Like these are like the things of the forming of the rebellion of the beginning, like, and me wondering like what's going to go on. What are they pulling from the books? What are they, what kind of fun nuggets is Tony Gilroy going to canonize that are from the EU? Because he seems to be the best person to do that. So for me, there was so much in those episodes that I felt like what he was building upon. And this is one of, listeners, this is one of the reasons why Ben and I don't talk episode by episode of shows, is because there's so much that can be done in early episodes that you think are dumb that end up paying off at the end of a season. Like you got to wait to kind of see that. So like, I know a lot of people felt the whole, like the fight on Yavin, that ends up becoming Yavin, but when Andor lands the TIE Avenger, on the planet and then basically gets taken hostage, or like that was just, he just sat around, he just got to be held up. And I was like, yeah, but there's a whole lot in that scene of showing how fragile these rebels are, of like, they're so disparate that they didn't know that, hey, Andor's kind of a bigwig when it comes to all these little rebel groups. Like he's been supporting you, and how, and how realistic of rebel groups kind of come together, but they have a lot of differing factions and different issues, and then they kind of basically eat each other or, kill each other, much in the way of what is showing out in a kind of accelerated timeline there on Yavin when, with Andor. So it was those kind of moments. The wedding, I agree, the wedding did feel a little long. I don't feel like we needed 3 episodes. I know why they did it. I know why they were kind of building that, of like kind of to continue to build up what Mon Mothma will be giving away. Like this is her life, that kind of stuff. It's really just, I did find interesting of kind of like all those things in play. I mean, obviously you had to kind of, it has one of my favorite lines of the entire series in it, but basically when Luthen is talking to Mon about Tay, and he's like, you know his price, and I forget exactly what his line, and she's like, what are you saying? He goes, isn't that nice for you? Like basically like, you don't need to make the hard decision. Just cold calculating, and stuff.
I love that exchange.
Yeah.
I don't have an issue. In fact, that was what, episode 3?
That was episode 3. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't have a huge problem with episode 3. I didn't feel like I needed 2 episodes to get there though, I guess.
Yeah.
I had expectations that we would hit the ground running a little bit more in season 2, and we really, in some ways we did, but in a lot of ways we did not. And
I do have one other point, is because when you came into Andor the first time, they had most of the season was done already. I don't think you really waited too much for episodes, correct? Or maybe you came in early. So anyways, I digress. So the first 3 episodes of Andor season 1 drop. And I can tell you, most people were like, this is the most boring thing on the planet. And then you get episode 4, nothing a lot happens. Episode 5, nothing really happens. And people are complaining that this is not a good show, whatever. Like some people are like, no, it's great. Look at the dialogue, look at the, character building, world building, that kind of stuff. And then you get to 6. I mean, 3 has an amazing, one of my favorite moments in the entire series is the end of 3 of that just,
I still think the end of 3 is the best for me, is my favorite moment in the entire show. And I got moments that felt close to that, and you kind of get almost a passing of the baton in a lot of ways when Cassian gets Mon out of Coruscant and they run the same music there, which I liked, but I didn't recall a monologue that hit me the same way that Luthen's does in season 1. I mean, I can rattle off about probably half a dozen moments in season 1 that there's just not an equivalent to in season 2. But the ending of this season is tremendous, phenomenal, and kind of covers a multitude of sins for me. But if pressed to watch a full season back of this show, I'm going with season 1 every time. And it was, a lot of it was the end of episode 3.
Yeah. Which is, just so you know, like, you and I definitely agree on that, but a lot of people didn't get the feels with that scene. And again, continually up until 6, they're like, this show is dumb. And I remember reading like those Reddit posts. I remember reading those kind of reviews of just like, where is this going? This is a stupid series about a character that we didn't even want, telling a story that we didn't even want, like all these things. And then, of course, you get to 6, and then you get the Narkina 5 sequence, those 4 episodes, and then you get the ending, and people were like, oh my goodness, this is the best show ever. And so I went in kind of feeling that too, was like, I saw all these people, kind of talking bad about these episodes, and I'm like, but no, they're doing so much character and world building, not so much world building, but character building to kind of set up these pieces later on. Like, you can't, some of the payoffs that I think you get later in the season would be diminished if you didn't have some of this foundation laid out. And could we have made it a little bit faster? Like, could the wedding been 2 episodes? Sure. I don't know. Or I kind of agree with you. Like, I love that we're leaving Andor in a place where I want more and I won't get it. Like, they knew when to kind of end on a high note. And I understand, like, Gilroy talks about a lot, that he's like, it was originally supposed to be 5 seasons. Each season was a year leading up to Rogue One. And he's just like, it would just outlast it. But I think they had enough to kind of build 3 seasons,
Hindsight's 2020.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I felt. I almost didn't need the, like, battle before Yavin, ... Like, I knew it was a year jump. I almost I tell you, I almost would prefer that the time jumps be kind of unknown. I felt like the season felt intentionally more broken up when I saw those flash up, and I knew they were going to happen every 3 episodes. I almost could do without them. Like, it kind of doesn't matter to me how close or far from Battle of Yavin we are. Yeah. Like, as far as what happens, what plays out, that's less of a big deal. And I told you this, I should note this is really important. A lot of my problem is my subscription level to Disney Plus.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And I have to state this. I will give season 2 another watch when I can watch these things commercial free, because it freaking took me out a lot of times. And the commercial, where they had commercial breaks programmed on Disney Plus, was awful. Like, just terrible. It was like the worst placement I could possibly think of, is exactly where they would go to commercial. So at some point in the future, hopefully near future, I don't know how quickly they'll get this to Blu-ray and 4K, but I do want to watch it unbroken, because I was able to do that with season 1, and it made a huge difference.
Well, me, I'll be buying this immediately when it's the day it's available. Yeah. And that thing will be going up pretty quick. But my goodness. So I watched it without those breaks. So
it's a better experiance. It's
definitely experience. So before we dive too much in the season, the other thing I want to talk about was how they released these episodes. So first season, it was the first 3 episodes dropped to kind of get you engaged, and then it was 1 episode per week, and so it went on for another 9 weeks.
Yes.
Obviously, this one, how did you feel about the dropping of 3 episodes at a time per week?
Brilliant, right?
Okay.
And especially with the fact that they've set it up ahead of time that these are 3 episode arcs. Now, I will say those first 2-3 episode pods to me are a little clunkier. Just as far as, do they really feel like they belong together? It's kind of hard to tell. Like, I'd say 1 through 3 and 4 through 6 just don't feel quite as cohesive to me. 7, 8, 9, obviously no question. And then and 10, 11, 12, same deal. So I shouldn't beat this up too much because I think they're covering so much more ground
Yeah.
over these 12 episodes than they had to in season 1. And so it's funny because I'm complaining about length in some ways with early episodes, but like I'm conflicted because I've just said I wish there was like 3 seasons instead of 2. So it's like, well, Ben, make up your mind. But
well, I think some of it is, I remember this is one of the things that I felt was the most relevant in the critiques of it. They're like, I'm fine doing these 3 episodes. Or 3 episodes per year. I just wish that we had gotten more than just Mon Mothma's wedding in the first 3 episodes. Like something else, something with the Senate, something like it felt like if this was a 1 year or like a couple years, like this was season 2 of season 3, and we devoted 3 episodes to the wedding. Sure, but these are 3 episodes of a 12 episode series finale. Why are we spending so much time? And again,
called Andor.
Yeah, called Andor.
I'm like, what are we doing?
But I think so I agree with you. But I think in season 1 we did it became, yes, it was mostly his story, but it did end up becoming a much bigger kind of characters as well. You know,
maybe it shouldn't have been called Andor season 2. Maybe it just should have been called Rogue Zero.
Rogue Zero, Rogue Zero plus 5. You know, but so because. I can tell you right now, if they had if they did the same kind of release structure as season 1, the internet would have been in an absolute uproar. To get episode 4, because again, not a lot happens. But I have to go back. I mean, like even in the episode 4 in season 1 in Aldhani, not a lot happens. A lot of talking. Because, I mean, it's him going and meeting them. You get some more stuff with, obviously, you start talking with ISB and with Mon Mothma. You get some more interesting stuff in that vicinity. But the stuff happening with Andor is very passive. There's not much action. There's not a lot of action in 5 either. It's not until you get to 6 when the actual eye is happening that they actually do the heist, which, again, is kind of similar in nature to episode 6 and this season.
I'm gonna tell you, I kind of tend to agree with the way the IMDb ratings come out on these episodes, because in season 2, episode 1, 7.9, 2, 7.5, and 8.6. Episode 4, 7.9, 5, 8.2, episode 6, 8.8, episode 7, 8.5, and then episode 8, 9.8, 9.7, 9.6, 9.5, 9.6. So, and everybody that's been following this, been tracking with it, no other show ever made has had consecutive episodes like this.
No.
These last 5 episodes at a 9.6 or better, or 9.5 or better. Nobody's ever done this before.
No.
And that's why I'm a happy camper with season 2, is because from 8 on,
it's brilliant. Yeah.
It's kind of beyond brilliant, honestly. Yeah. It's like, I don't know how they pulled off what they pulled off, because there are certain moments, the show feels like it could have so easily diverted down this road of fan service based on the expectation built for season 1. And they didn't do that. They deliver something else entirely that's even better than a bunch of really overt, and they were never going to go overt fan service, right? But had they done that, it would have been easy. It just would have been easy.
Well, there were so many theories out there of going on that Luthen was a failed Jedi. Yeah, I'm just no, or that Clea or someone was Cassian's sister that he couldn't find, and I'm
my favorite theory was the one that the little robot. That they were going to take his brain and put it into
that one. That one I was expecting, and I wasn't disappointed that it didn't happen. I like kind of how they went, but I was really happy they didn't make Clea or someone his sister. That is just something that is in the ether that we will never find out, and whether she's still dead. Or if she died on the planet, or if she made it out. And
Gilroy had a great quote about that, and you probably read it, that it's narratively it's better if Cassian doesn't find her, because everyone that he saves is almost this stand-in, universal stand-in for his sister. So it's it would almost break the character if he actually like found her, and so it's almost like it's like a human MacGuffin in some way. Like you're just not. It's such a part of him that's like empty that he's just like always trying to fill.
Yeah.
So I think now I do think the character finds some sort of. I do believe. I don't think Urso is his sister, but she probably fills that more completely than any other character in this whole narrative. And so they save that for
Rogue One.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This show just continues to do nothing but make Rogue One better.
Even better than it was. Yeah.
Yeah. It almost Rogue One to me doesn't even deserve to be made better. It's a good movie. It's like, but it's like, it feels unfair that it's got this show sitting before that elevates everything that happens in that movie quite substantially. It's like, it feels like cheating, I guess.
It does. And listeners, we did already talk about Rogue One in one of our previous episodes. You can go back and to listen to that one. However, I will say, so Laura and I, watched these episodes. The next night, we immediately watched Rogue One after watching episodes 10, 11, and 12. And there's definitely, there's a difference, of how dark and serious that these Andor is.
Yeah, the tone's different.
And then the tone changes. And obviously a lot of that is because it's not a full Tony Gilroy production. He came in for rewrites. Everything a lot was shot. And he changed some things. But I say that, but I digress of it felt like it's a little campier. It's a little more on the joke side. But it kind of is a little more hopeful than Andor. Andor still feels very dark, even at the end where you're like all this stuff. It still feels kind of dark, and we may not make it. Where Rogue One has a little bit more hope, which leads in perfectly because then we went right into A New Hope, and it's like Rogue One is this nice little palate cleanser of going from the super serious darkness that is Andor and transitioning you into not so much the camp, but the hope-filled, typical hero's journey story that is Star Wars. And it really branches out, but it also really makes the Empire seem so much more dangerous in A New Hope, and in Rogue One than previously. So for me, for both of us, we said it really worked. If it kind of you went from this dark, deep down darkness to kind of slowly rise up, much like what you're supposed to, and then you get the hero.
So I haven't watched Rogue One in its entirety post season 2. And I haven't. The same is true of A New Hope, but I did watch the fun scene in the, let's just call it the conference room in A New Hope, which is really fun. Where Tarkin comes in and is announced that the Senate's been dissolved, which feels so much more visceral given what's played out in this season. And then that, I don't know, there's more layers to it as far as the cocky guy, talking trash to Vader about his
ancient religion.
That's super funny. Insult somebody in a board meeting about their religion and then get choked for it.
Yeah.
That's probably pretty realistic, actually.
You're never living this down. Yeah.
I agree with you. I think the tone is working for whatever's following after. I just can't believe that they've come up with this rich a backstory to show you the cost in putting a 19-year-old force sensitive in the seat of an X-Wing to blow up a 20-year project.
Yeah.
It's wild. I'm looking forward to watching A New Hope now with this in the back of my mind of all the human toll in getting Luke and Han and Leia into this position to blow this thing up. And I love now the fan theories on how long exactly was Death Star 1 actually operational? It's no more than a couple weeks.
Yeah. Well, not a couple days. Yeah. You're
it's
right.
Anywhere
weeks,
from it's anywhere from a week to maybe 2 weeks.
Yeah.
5 days to 2 weeks. The thing was operational. And it's probably a good thing Krennic wasn't even around because he would have probably had a heart attack anyway.
Well, he probably would have gone working in Arcata 5 as well, been right along there with Deidre, and just
That was brilliant.
yeah,
And that's the stuff I'm talking about where they stuck the landing. Like the way these characters meet their end, either via death or, in the case of Deidre, that brilliant callback. And it was like, yeah, and I kind of hope they don't. I know the temptation would probably be like running a couple seasons of some show around her, and is there a redemptive arc for her? I'd rather not revisit that. I think
she's right where she needs to be.
I do. I think it's almost like purgatory, or hell. I mean, take your pick. But yeah, I don't really want to revisit that. I love the character. I mean, and the actress just blows my mind.
Well, that brings up something I'm kind of nervous about, is now you have some of these characters that are still alive that don't die in Rogue One, didn't die in Andor.
Yeah.
And Gilroy's done. He spent 10 plus years of his life in Star Wars. He's ready to do other things, as much as we all want him to stay. But you now have these amazing characters that other people can now play with, like I'm scared that there's so much now. There's so much love for Clea now that I'm scared that they're going to start turning her into like, her own TV show where, she's going off doing the mission of the week kind of a situation. That's going to just weaken everything else and lessen what she's done.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious, the actresses like her, whether they've got some sort of like almost like a Christian Bale role when it came to like returning as Batman, that he would do it, but only if Nolan directed. Like he said that like I would come back for a fourth Nolan Batman film, but it'd have to be Nolan. I wonder if they've got the same kind of opinion of it, like, yeah, I'll reprise Clea or Daedra or whoever.
Wilmon. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll reprise it, but only if Gilroy's involved in some capacity. Yeah. And they would be wise to do so. Because I think, what's the actress that plays Clea? I mean, she's like
Elizabeth Dulo.
So I think she's too good to get stuck playing that character in some spinoff. And if I were her manager or agent, I would advise her to not do that. If Disney is offering that, I would say, don't. You're too gifted. I know this is her first role, which is just
absurd.
But don't do it. I think you're too talented to get pigeonholed like that, and you would get pigeonholed like that. And I think you leave it here. Tremendous performance.
Amazing. Absolutely, like,
you can't
stunning.
take your eyes off her. Like, she's just so emotive without doing a whole lot verbally, and
and she was fantastic in season 1. It's just that she had a lot less. But I think Gilroy said, like, after seeing her performances in the few scenes he had her in season 1, he's just like, I gotta do more with her.
They wrote so much more material for her.
He even said, he goes, if I can buy stock in an actor, it's Elizabeth Dulo. Like, that's who I'm going with. Like, he's just like, she's going to be phenomenal.
Now, some of the other actors, like Denise, I don't know if she's been at it a long time. It may be, if the writers are good and they decide but I don't think they will. I don't think there's some Deidre Miro spinoff coming. Like, I can't see it.
I hope not. I hope that most of these characters don't get touched. Like, I feel like it's time. Like, I think the one thing that I'm really taking away from Andor, and hopefully other people, and especially people in Disney, take away, is that you can have stories about other people in the universe. Not everything needs to connect. Not everything needs to tie in with each other in regards to what people are around. Like, you can have, like, people kind of show up. Like, General Draven showed up for several episodes when they're on Yavin from, like, Rogue One. That's fantastic. You can have Krennic here, but, like, it was purposeful. There was a reason why these people showed up. You just didn't have them, like, pop in like, oh, hey, I just happened to be in the area and I decided to stop by, and, like, that would be frustrating. Like, that's the kind of stuff that I don't like. Like, that, again, that goes back to the fan service stuff that I harp on all the time. Like, that's not cool. That's not fun. It's fun, like, oh, hey, that's like, that's so-and-so, but if it's so obvious, I hate it. So it's just
now the one I could see them doing is a Mon Mothma fronted spinoff, maybe a season. with the lead into Jedi. I could see that. I don't think they'll do it either, but that would make more sense to me. I think you'd only need a season to do it. Many Bothans died.
Yeah, I mean, like, show us some of that stuff, or kind of eclipse the end of, like, basically in between Empire and Jedi, and then right after Jedi as well. Like, how do you turn these groups who got together to defeat an empire, how do you turn them into a working government,
Yeah.
I would find that interesting. I don't know if a lot of people would, because you got to deal with some politics and other stuff. There'd be a lot less fighting. Tying in was still coming, just because the Emperor died doesn't mean the Empire died. There was still a lot of, years of pushing them back and taking.
So, I mean, at this point, man, I'm just considering, especially after this season, I'm just considering the sequel trilogy to be non-canon. Like,
it needs to be.
Because it just, if not, like, all this material is just like
worthless. They just fall
utterly
right back
worthless.
Into it.
Yeah. Disney, I'm begging you to like come out and just dub.
Go back to the drawing board.
7, 8, 9 and call it expanded universe or whatever you want to dub it. But
yeah.
Get me right after Jedi. Get me Bucky Barnes and let's get going.
Yeah.
Recast Leia.
Recast Han.
You can recast Han. Whatever you need to do.
No, don't recast him. Use Alden, like from Solo.
I don't know if anybody will
like
allow
that.
No.
Oh man, bummer. I thought he was fantastic. He's definitely.
But you could keep Genevieve O'Reilly as Mon
and Donald Glover.
Oh yeah, is he getting? He's almost. The longer this takes, the more he's catching up with Billy D.
Yeah,
like circa, Like
yeah, but if you're playing post Jedi, you want him to be, around that age. But anyways, I digress.
There's infinite possibilities. I'm sure Disney will find a way to screw it up,
or do something different. Like realize that you're playing with characters here that no one knew, for most part, no one knew until this show came out, right? I mean, outside of Cassian from one movie, Mon Mothma, who shows up briefly in a couple of movies or TV shows. Like, this is where she really kind of gets the character really grows. See how great you put great people together with great story, great dialogue, and let them build the world with new characters. We'll get behind it. Like, that's what this is. It doesn't have to be Skywalker. It doesn't have to be Solo. Like, as I was saying before, you want to do that serial TV show? Give me Rogue Squadron. Mission by mission. And then over.
That thing's been stuck in development. I mean, it was supposed to be a movie.
Yeah. But
then they were looking at it as a TV show, but it was too expensive.
Mm-hmm. It's just there's just so much that's frustrating with it. And I'm sad that I live in a world where there's no more new Andor episodes coming out, but I'm happy that I was alive to watch these, because I think these 2 seasons were just fantastically amazing. Again, I loved it all. I mean, I am also, a real big Star Wars nerd, hence why I'm wearing a Star Wars Hawaiian shirt. So,
did love as everybody does. I did love the exchange with Luthen and Daedra in the gallery.
Mm-hmm.
But I was sort of surprised for a guy that had like his ship outfitted with like every way to evade the Empire and get away, that there wasn't more built into that building as far as like ways to destroy their communications equipment. And I thought he had a way I thought he was just going to have her in there and just smile at her and detonate the place.
That would have been cool, but then we would have missed out the rest of that episode.
Well, it would have not been a fitting, it would have been a fitting end to Luthen, but it wouldn't have been a fitting end to Daedra. And yeah, the whole hospital sequence is utterly incredible. That sequence is up there for sure. And I love that she's basically pushing around E.T.'s grandma.
So, okay.
I just want to say, I laughed so hard. I had to regain my composure because it was such a funny moment in a serious sequence. When that thing, that grandma thing she's pushing around goes, and she goes, "What?" I lost it. I was like, wait, what? Pay attention.
So there's another great moment in that elevator scene as well. So I'm going to take you on a little journey here. Episode 1, Season 1. Cassian Andor walks into a brothel or nightclub, kind of the hip happening place, and here's a song called Neamos, right? A little slower, a little dubstep, right? You go to season a year later, right? So the song's been out for at least a year now. You go to a wedding and everyone's singing this song, and it's gone from the small club, or dance studio into mainstream culture. And then you go another 2 years, 3 years later.
Yes.
And now it's Muzak.
Yes.
In the elevator. It has done the full musical cycle.
That's so great. Yeah. It's the level of detail in this show is just outstanding.
Yeah, it makes me happy because it feels real world. Like they didn't like we don't need to make another song. Let's just remix this one a couple times, and that's what it is. And it shows like in the wedding, it's like everyone knew it. Like they're all singing along of like Neamos, and doing the dance to it. Like it has become part of pop culture. And then as so many things do, it gets overused, forgotten about, and then you're in the grocery store a couple later going, man, these jams are awesome. Like, this is what I was going at the club for,
It's weird now.
Yeah.
Being an early 40-something, what they're playing in the grocery store is really, I'm like, damn it, I'm old.
You are, yeah. So, like, this dentist office is playing my jams.
Yes, they are.
Yeah. So,
I did love that Luthen's first location for terrorism against the Empire was Naboo.
Yes.
I just was like, and I recognized in me. I was like, that looks suspiciously familiar and fitting. Yeah. Totally fitting. It hit old Palps where he
right where he used to live.
Yep.
So I do love So I've kind of rewatched most of the episodes now. So like through a second viewing, and I didn't pick up the first time. The second time I saw it, especially in this episode, was. They start off with they're talking on the stairs after he's talked with Young, and he's trying to get her to go, and he's like, you go to the ship or go to wherever I'm going to go.
Yeah. Safe house, I think.
Yeah, safe house, and she's like, I'll do the comms, and he's like, and he says some line of like he goes, no, you like move, he just tells her move, and you don't get anything from it. Like you're just kind of like, okay, whatever, and then you get the backstory of how long they've been together and how long they've been working together and where that comes from. And so it's basically kind of almost his goodbye to her. Many other TV shows would have had that move be the end of the episode, or later on you would have gotten the backstory first. But for some reason, Gilroy gives us the emotional moment first, and we don't really feel it because we don't know the backstory until we start getting hit with it later on in these flashbacks of like, oh, how powerful that is, how close they really are. And in some ways, how much she's really the driving force behind a lot of this. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of
she's almost more by the end. She's more Axis than
he is. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, did you know so much more of the universe and stuff? Do you know what unit Luthen was when he was Imperial? Like, I was trying to figure out because you don't get outside that ship that he's in. So I was trying to is there any significance to what he's wearing?
Not to my knowledge. Now, keep in mind, a lot of my Star Wars knowledge, I stopped really diving deep into stuff once the prequels came out, and then once everything became Legends, I just lived in the Legends world for the most part. So a lot of the older, the things that tie back into the West End games, role playing stuff, I can pick up, or the expanded universe books that are now Legends, anything that's kind of canon. So I don't really know much, but I will point out one thing I loved about this series compared to a lot of the others is how much they used non-stormtrooper troopers.
Yes.
Yes.
And it's very important. No, go ahead. Explain it because it makes so much more sense.
So, I mean, and everywhere else, I mean, even in the original, you have stormtrooper officers, non-stormtrooper army troopers, everything else that is happening, because your stormtroopers are your elite shock troopers, and you don't throw them that was one of the things I didn't like in Rogue One, where they had them on prison guard duty. You wouldn't waste stormtroopers. They didn't waste it in Arcana 5. You didn't see a stormtrooper at all. It was all just regular trooper guys or regular guards. I loved it. That was perfect because it makes the stormtroopers that much. They're a shock and awe force. That's the whole point behind them. So it was great kind of seeing him as just a regular infantry trooper and not wearing the stormtrooper. So like it continually makes the stormtrooper that much scarier. Like when they're in oh my goodness, in the first 3 episodes of season 2, when they're on the grain planet, where you have a lot of those army troopers in addition to stormtroopers, right? And so it makes kind of this balance of like, you've got some regular guys and then you got some of the elite guys.
Well, even the initial crowd control in Ghorman wasn't stormtroopers.
No,
they're just regular security forces. But
which is, again, I love the fact that they're doing this, and it's not just like, oh, we've got Imperial officers and we have stormtroopers, and that's basically it. I like that they're breaking.
And hey, I was glad to see that they kind of went full lean into the World War II analogies with what Ghorman, the way it felt and the language they spoke, and like you got super French, Dutch resistance vibes throughout all those episodes, right down to what they were wearing and the shops, and it was just a nice touch. It definitely drove it home, and they felt with some of the singing and stuff, it felt very. It's kind of a cross between. I had heard that the number, like the population number of Ghorman, was significant, and that it was very similar or dead on to like calling back to the Armenian genocide. So you've got that whole component. Plus, there are other elements where they just felt very Jewish as well. So it's like they leaned heavy into it. They were like, yeah, we're not going to mess about on the kind of the parallels we're drawing with what's about to go down, and you knew it was gonna. Yeah. So
8 obviously was amazing, and especially when they're singing in the square when they're doing that, it was great. But I could just in my head, I made kind of the joke of like, I was like, oh, is this like Les Miserables? They're gonna be like, do you hear the people singing their songs of angry men? You know, I just wanted to like, are they gonna break out into that? No, but that's beside the point. But I do love the fact that they created their own French language, like, because it's not French,
right?
But it's like I forget. It sounds like
orally it sounds.
Yeah,
French.
It's supposed to be like phonetically it is French, but then they're using like German like structure. I forget exactly. I read an article about it, but I've lost it at this point. But it was like really interesting. So, and everyone is French except for like the leader guy. He was German, which is why his sounds a little different.
Well, and did you notice who that actor was? He's the guy that gets his head bashed in by the bear Jew in Inglourious Bastards.
No, I didn't know that. Oh,
he's the officer. Where Pitt's like, hey, you need to tell us. I want to know where all your Kraut buddies are, and he's like, no, and he's like, we actually wish you were going to say that anyway. Watching old Johnny go to work is about the closest thing we get to a ball game around here. And what's his face? The horror director comes out, but yeah, that was the actor.
Oh, I did not pick that up, but that's fantastic. So, I love watching, and again, watching it a second time through, it really hit me, was you've just gone through episode 8 with the Ghorman Massacre, and you have that song where they're like Valley, Highlands, or whatever. And then in episode 9, in Andor, like the opening sequence music in Andor, over top of it is a slowed down version of Valley, Highlands, like them singing that in that language. And I was like blown. I was like, oh my goodness, that's powerful. Like, they
do special stuff with the opening title. It's not even a title card. It's just a show card. Yeah, they play with the music in each episode. They use it as a storytelling device, which is really smart.
And they did that in season 1 too. It's different each time, but my goodness, it's fantastic.
And in 8 we get the concluding act of old Cyril.
Oh yeah. That took me by surprise.
Same here.
Absolutely took me by surprise that they were gonna. It was a bold choice, and I think it was the right choice. It's funny because I was thinking to myself, like, where's the worst place you can put Cyril to kind of take him off his path or to feel like sympathy for someone? The guy who has been tailoring his pre-war security force uniform, who has done stuff to his suit for interviews. The guy who's barely big into clothing. Where are you going to put him? Basically, the clothing capital of the world, and you don't expect him to feel some type of like connection with these people and join their cause, because I was getting a lot of vibes of that he was kind of disenfranchised with the Empire, or definitely, obviously, he felt used, but there was a connection that he kind of felt with what's his face's daughter. I felt like,
Yeah, well, he is for me, he is the quintessential tragic character in the show. If Cassian's heroic, which he is, then his foil, his tragic counterpart, is Cyril, a guy that worshipped at the altar of order and structure his entire life, and finally, only at the very, very end did he start to question it. But unfortunately, by that point, it was too late. It was just too late.
And that brutal moment, that absolutely brutal moment where he's just about to kill him, and Cassian is just like, I don't even know who you are.
No.
Like, and just absolutely wrecks Cyril. Like, I have spent years of my life thinking about this moment probably, and you don't even know who I am. Like, you've destroyed my life.
And then a shot to the head, and it's over.
Yeah. It
reminds me, there's a really silly sketch in that comedy show called I Think You Should Leave. It's a really awkward, uncomfortable, but it's got, I think it's Will Forte plays this character that he's like this old man on a flight, and he's been waiting to get his revenge on this guy that was a baby that cried during a flight like 30 years before. And he's like, you don't remember me, but I remember you. And he's like yelling at him, and then he doesn't get his revenge because the stewardess comes and it's like, yeah, you're in economy. It's back then. That's basically Cyril. But he does legitimately pause, and you kind of have this hopeful thought in your mind that had things played out differently, you might have been looking at a resistance fighter at some point. Like could he have gotten to that point? We'll never know. He'd kind of made his bed, frankly, even though his final moments with Deidre are awesome. Like where he finally rejects authority to a certain extent, and is just like starts to think for himself. But by that point, it's just too late.
Yeah.
And you wonder, her character is so complicated anyway and convoluted. That scene with his mother is fantastic, but like you find out she was raised in she calls it like an imperial orphanage.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting because the math doesn't line up.
No, it doesn't. Yeah.
And so, but it makes sense because it's like the Empire would have just dubbed everything from that period. Oh, it was always imperial.
Yeah.
Right? It's always been imperial. And she does that, and it's just a really interesting insight into the psyche. But yeah, watching her crack was a lot of fun.
Well, and it's definitely interesting to see that she also kind of is unnerved by what is happening because she knows all of it, like what's going on. So it's interesting to kind of see her crack a little bit as well. And that one kind of sergeant just absolutely, or I forget what rank he was, but is just like, I don't care. Just kill them all. I'm doing my job.
Her supervisor, even before that, she's kind of pleading her case, and he just says to her 3 horrible words. Bad luck, Ghorman.
Yeah. Yeah. The Partagaz is, oh my goodness, absolutely super intelligent, and like, he deserved his end, but also like they lost someone who was quite talented in that role for doing dumb stuff. But he has so many good lines, and Gilroy praises the actor. He's just like, he is the best for me, he's the best person to do exposition ever, because he just does it so well. You don't even know that you're getting exposition. He's like, but he will chew through it and make it interesting. So you just give it to him. Give it to, his name escapes me, but
Anton Lesser.
Yeah. But
Game of Thrones.
Yeah, but he has some great lines too that are just these amazing quips. But one of my favorites is when Cyril comes back to Coruscant and does his little talk with Partagaz, and where he is talking about the Ghorman front, and he says they're eager but naive, or I forget the exact line or whatever. And Partagaz, just with a parting shot, goes, so many are. And you could just see Deidre's like, oh, you're talking about Cyril. Oh, and Cyril is just like not getting it because he's in the best moment of his life, he says. It's just like, and Deidre's just like, you do not realize that you just got made fun of right to your face. Like, this is a sad moment. But
yeah, totally a pawn. Total pawn.
Yeah. Oh, so there's just so much, and I think in depth of this. But I mean, I'm going to say right now, 8 was, everyone's really calling 8 the Ghorman Massacre as probably one of the better episodes. I think it has a higher rating, but for me, 9, where Andor goes back and gets Mothma out, I think is probably, I like it better than 8. Like, there's a lot.
I'm probably with you there. I'm with you there.
It is. There's so much, like, I feel more going on. It is so interesting. As much as I think 8 is fantastic and dark and is done so well, there's so much I feel. There's a tenseness. Like, I was expecting it. So, like, nerd alert. But so I was also really happy that we had the Ghorman Massacre, because the Ghorman Massacre was actually talked about in a West End Games role-playing book from like 1990, like the Rebel Alliance. Like, and we're talking like 2 sentences. Like, it just kind of brings it up and then never talks about it again. And then it kind of talks about it was supposed to be when Tarkin landed on the protesters. That was the Ghorman Massacre. But obviously that got turned into legends. And I love Tony Gilroy for still kind of honoring the Tarkin shuttle landing.
Yeah, that still happened.
It still happened, but then changing Ghorman Massacre to be what he needed it to be. So, like, it felt like I'm honoring what has come past, but I'm gonna I'm gonna change it to meet my needs. And I'm like, I'm here all for it. Like, this is fantastic. Yeah. And so, but I love that episode, but I think 9 for me was just, there was so much going on. I got a lot of those, just those great emotional feels, those moments, like her speech, calling out the Emperor.
Yeah.
The moment that Andor has with Clay at the end, and she's just like, I can't believe you did this. I can't believe you got him out, And then Tony Gilroy again, taking the time to make a nod to another Star Wars product he didn't really retcon what had happened, but he just amended. So, like, in the TV show Rebels, the cartoon or whatever, in season 3, Gold Squadron, which is referenced in Andor, and then the group like Ezra Bridger and all those people kind of save Mon Mothma and bring her into Yavin. And she makes a speech there, right?
Yep.
And it's fine. Like, I know a lot of people who really like it, but, Rebels was a kid show. It doesn't have the weight. You don't, this is the first time you've really seen Mon Mothma, I believe, or like spending a lot of time with her. So Gilroy and Dan Gilroy kind of was like, do we have to use this speech? Can we do something else? And like, no, let's do it. And so I love the fact, again, they amended it, but they didn't overwrite what was going on. They didn't retcon what happened in the TV show. They made nods to it. They said, hey, Gold Squadron's going to bring it in. And then even Draven was like, hey, Mon Mothma's going to make a speech. And so, like, they're referencing this stuff that's already happening, but just making some small changes to kind of fit their narrative. And I love that about it. I love that about Tony Gilroy. Did these? It's so funny to me is because Tony says he is not a Star Wars fan, that he doesn't have a lot of respect for Star Wars. But yet, for some reason, out of the people who are making Star Wars shows, he seems to have the most respect for it. Like, the most to kind of make, like, to care about what has come before and to use those stuff, or to, like, make these nods of, like, hey, I don't want to mess up the continuity in Rebels, so we're going to still connect to that, but I'm going to, make some changes. The only thing that I can know that he has retconned was the meeting of K2 and Andor. And that was because it was like a one-off comic, like a single comic issue.
He was so pissed too. He was like, I can't believe in this downtime that somebody's taken it upon themselves to create an origin story for K2S. And he's like, I'm not using it. Sorry.
No.
Like,
And that's fine. I mean, and that's fine. Like, I understand, like, frustrating. I know get on Dave Filoni for not following canon at all, even his own canon that he's created. So, like, I can't fault Filoni and not fault Gilroy, but I understand it better in Gilroy's sense, right? Like, he was just like, hey, this is a one-off comic, not a TV show, not a book, not something else, and like, let's fit the narrative. And it's a comic maybe a lot of people didn't read, so like, we need to have this kind of moment. So that's beside the point. Anyways. But it's just, again, it's funny to me that Gilroy seems to have so much more respect for what has come before than any other person who is doing Star Wars today. Like,
sometimes it takes an outsider, to breathe life into this stuff.
I mean, the fact
and
that
I do think he respects it, because I think he respects what Star Wars, especially what A New Hope, how it changed the game.
Yeah.
as far as cinema. Like you can at least take that film and be like that rewrote everything that we kind of understand as filmmaking. So, no, selfishly, yeah, I'd probably love for him to kind of stick around in the space for another go around on something else. But honestly, I'm probably more curious to see if he wants to try to get back into the director's chair for a feature. His track record isn't the best. I mean, my favorite of his is Michael Clayton, but like he made some other stuff after that wasn't particularly great. So I think he's got unfinished business in that space. So we'll see. And then his brother. I mean, what's up with the Gilroys, man? Like just the talent.
They're the American Nolans. That's what it is.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But though he did also, fun fact, Gilroy, Tony put his son and his son-in-law or nephew-in-law in Andor season 2. They play the two rival heads of the rebels in the first 3 episodes that are going against each other, like the two leads or whatever, who after Maya dies, they're just kind of like at each other's throats. And he said he came up with that, seeing them actually like bicker at each other at like hilarious. A Thanksgiving or some dinner or whatever. He's just like, oh, I got to write this in and cast these guys. So
no, one thing, this is kind of unrelated, but I did want to just give super kudos to the location scouts on this show, because so much of what you're seeing is like really there. Like the exterior walkway and a lot of the building of the Senate chamber is real.
Yeah.
And it's so impressive, them blending real modern architecture and then creating that point in the frame that they're going to fill in. And it just looks outstanding. This show's always had the aesthetic down where it just feels lived in. And the only other stuff that feels that way is the original trilogy and probably Rogue One as well.
Yeah. We've kind of talked about this. There's definitely, you feel the edges of the universe with stuff like the volume or some of these other sets where it's like, if I just knock the camera just a couple inches to the left, I'm going to see where the set ends. Where you don't get that with this, because most of this is all, I mean, they do a lot of on sound stages, but a lot of it is real world, and they just kind of blend that all in together, and it's brilliant.
By the way, I have not read anything to back this up, but I'm going to guess, make an educated guess that Luthen's safe house that Cassian and Bix lived in and then Clea was in is totally inspired by Deckard's apartment in Blade Runner. It feels like it's lifted right out of that. The whole apartment complex feels like something out of Blade Runner. Yeah. Which I love that feel, that nod. That dirty nod for, Coruscant can't be all nice, right?
No. Well, I mean, you look at any major city, like, the government areas, those things are pristine, really looking good. But then you get kind of down a couple of those roads, and it all kind of starts looking terrible and lived in and trash everywhere.
I will admit there is a huge disconnect between this show and then going back and like watching one of the prequels, watching Obi-Wan go into like a diner, and sit down with like
some alien.
It's a loose connection at best.
Yeah, it's so pretty in the prequels.
Yeah,
everything's nice and lighted
and digital. And digital.
It feels rough.
Yeah,
but I mean, because that's the McLaren Center there in England or whatever that they use. Yeah, which was absolutely fantastic. Yeah, a lot of that. I mean, even like in the first season, where like the drop points that Clea goes to meet Vel, a couple times, and it's like all of that walkaway space is there also in London. And it's just kind of like you just shoot it at the right angles and you get that. So I did also read an article where Gilroy was talking about why they didn't use the volume, and he goes, the problem with using the volume is you need to do basically your post-production up front.
Yes.
So you can put it on the volume. And he's like, that's just not how I work. I don't think that's the best way to do it, is getting all your post or your other stuff before. He's like, that's what post is for, is to kind of fill in those gaps and see what needs to be done.
Yeah, it's a different way of working.
Yeah.
I'm probably a fan now that I think about it when it comes to the volume. I really like it for building a nice physical interior set that's got exterior windows, and then I use the volume outside of it.
Yeah. Well, didn't they use the volume for Masters of the Air, right? We talked about that, where so they had the explosions going off.
Yeah, they used it for that, and they've been using it more for exactly the way I'm describing, where they build a set, and instead of green screening the windows, they go ahead and do that. Yeah, that work up front. And he's right. The prep work involved in that whole setup, any sort of LED soundstage, is extensive, and it requires a lot of technicians. I mean, it doubles your crew immediately to run it, and they're finicky. Like, you won't see that in the behind the scenes, like how often those things like go down or glitch or whatever. Like, I think the one at ILM was pretty reliable, but these things are popping up now in other cities that are a little lesser quality, and they can be really unreliable. Just the number of computers, that the servers that everything has to run off of, it's all going to be tied in properly. And then the end result's only as good as like your digital artists, as far as what they've pumped in to produce, to project, basically. So yeah, I won't have to worry about it. I'm never going to work on anything that's going to use it. And frankly, with Hollywood kind of circling the drain right now, I don't know that many productions that are going to be able to afford it anyway. Yeah.
So another thing I want to bring up is, especially on my second viewing, but so Perrin's speech in episode 2 is when he's given, like, at the rehearsal dinner, essentially. So the first time through it, like, I just kind of was like, didn't really put a lot of thought into it, and just like, oh, this is just Perrin talking. He doesn't know what's going on. But it's actually really, like, a second time through, is really kind of interesting and very powerful, because he talks about very much how strife and, not depression is not the right word, what am I looking for? Like, just suffering will find you. You don't need to go looking for it. It's just going to happen. And then he kind of, like, he changes to something, and this is what threw me the first time, was he was just like, pleasure, merriment, all these different things. And I was like, oh, it's just Perrin being Perrin. He just wants to be this. But he then talks about joy, and he's just like, it's the small moments that you need to hang on to, the small moments that need to sustain you through the suffering that you will inevitably have, in life. And that whole speech kind of changed my mind a little bit on Perrin, of like, maybe he knows more than he's letting on. And there's a deleted scene of him having a conversation with Mon, where he's like, I've known the whole time. He's like, I just wish you would have trusted me with it. Like, I was here saving your back, like making friends with these higher up people that you hated, so that way they would look favorably upon us, kind of a thing. So you could do your thing. So.
Yeah, I did hear about that. And
well, there's also the moment in episode 1 or even 2 of that, where he points out to her that Tay is a weak man. Like,
yeah,
Tay's drinking too much. Tay is talking. Like, you best handle that kind of a thing. So again, I may be reading too much into this, but like, that's kind of on my second viewing of those episodes. I was like, oh, Perrin, you are not an idiot.
No, he's not, and it makes Mon kind of sacrificing that even more tragic in a lot of ways, because it's like, I had read that too, that it basically, she sacrificed part of her own family that she didn't necessarily have to.
Yeah.
On the altar of rebellion. But then, yeah, it's probably okay that they decided to kind of leave that ambiguous and leave it up to the viewer to know, like, kind of interpret how much did he really know? Is he just content being sort of like, high society?
Going to all the parties, being the trophy husband.
Because that's what it felt like, but like at first. But you're right. There is more to that speech. Like, it was like, oh, there's this guy's not as shallow as he's like come off for like during the first season. So.
But he does such a great job of, again, like I said, the first watch through, I was like, oh no, Perrin's so shallow. It wasn't until I actually sat back and really like listened to what he was saying. Because he does the whole pleasure, and you're just like, oh yeah, you would be the one talking about pleasure. Like, that's the point of life, is to feel good, merriment, all that kind of stuff. But no, he dives deep. It's good. Man, I gotta say, the acting in season 2 is just as on point as the acting in season 1. Just phenomenal. All these actors that they've pulled from, it's ridiculous.
I will say though, like, the character, I guess I didn't expect them to basically make Saw like a basically a laughing stock. Like he's like this, he's like a useful idiot kind of when it comes to like the rebellion. I was just like, and then totally out of left field that like I thought he'd like lost limbs and stuff in battle, and it's like no, it's because he's freaking
a drug addict. He's sniffing gas fumes.
Gas. Yeah. You have no idea where I am. That's been memed immediately. Like I love my favorite ones. He's got all the Disney stuff on him. You don't know where I am.
That's funny. No, that was so. I will say that actually was not my least favorite, but like,
yeah,
I kind of was questioning like, where are we going here? Why? I mean, like just the craziness of Saw, or are we just getting how did Saw go from season 1? He's in good shape to Rogue One, 5 years later of like the downfall. And I kind of felt the same with you. Like it was just action because Saw was always the far more violent one. It was one of the reasons why he wasn't part of the rebellion is because he was more violent than what like Mon Mothma and Bail Organa did. So
he was useful for a time though.
He was. Which by the way, I thought they had to recast Bail Organa, right? Yeah. Wasn't Jimmy Schmitz, right?
Yeah, and I think Brat.
Yeah, who was
great.
Absolutely amazing.
Yeah, he is.
I don't hate Jimmy Schmitz at all.
No.
I think he's fine. I liked Brad a whole lot better as like I felt like he
I do too.
He felt like he belonged in the Star Wars universe a lot better. But I love the fact that Gilroy drops him in episode 6 at the end of this arc, so we get a whole week to complain about the fact that they recast Bail Organa. So that way when he actually matters, that's the last thing for our mind. We've dealt with it. The audience has dealt with this change. And so now we can get into the real stuff. And it's like, because there's no other point for him to show up in episode 6. It's literally as they're crossing paths going into Skulden's meeting. Like, it was a pointless scene. The only point is to say, hey, guess what? Bail Organa, not Jimmy Schmitz. It's Pratt. Enjoy.
And, I mean, how many movies was Schmitz in as Bail?
Rogue One, Attack of the Clones, and Revenge of the... Was he in Attack? I think Attack of the Clones. So
was he? Least, I thought he was just in Revenge of the Sith, but...
Might have been. So at least 3, and then he's been in the Obi-Wan, the Kenobi TV series.
Kenobi? Okay. All right. Then, so yeah, they've got it pretty established.
So he's pretty established as being that, but...
And then a million pieces of him in A New Hope.
His first acting credit.
I mean, he was alive. He was alive then, so they could retroactively credit. little bits of Jimmy Smits.
So I understand there was a lot of kind of grief about Brat doing it. I felt, like I said, I don't know, like Jimmy just doesn't feel Star Wars, even though he's been in so many things. I think he would have done a fine job. I think he would have been great. But just seeing Brat be in it, I was just stunned of like, wow, this is impressive of like how he feels and how he moves and is a part of it. I mean, at this point it's done. I know Gilroy wanted to use Jimmy Schmitz, but it was like the just timing and scheduling was off. So
I did appreciate the whole dynamic of the distrust of information coming from anyone associated with Luthen.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was a really interesting dynamic. I wouldn't have even have thought to include it. So hats off to the writing team for doing that, because it was like, yeah, you would need more than one source to verify something of that magnitude coming to you. And so I think some viewers were a little confused, like, wait, why was this such a big deal? Like, why? Because you've only been in the trenches with anyone in kind of Luthen's sphere. You've really not been embedded with rebel leadership elsewhere. So that was an interesting touch, like in that conflict. Because and what have we said that works best in film? Conflict.
Conflict.
Yeah. Include it everywhere you possibly can. Characters with divergent viewpoints that might even be fighting the same fight, and it totally made sense. Because it was the last place Clea wanted to go was Was
Was
Yavin.
Yavin. Yep.
Yeah. Because they
like,
were so distrusting of Luthen, mainly because of his methods. I mean,
and
could you blame them?
He was basically kind of taught Cassian the thing of just kill first if you kill something. I mean, there's even that moment in the episode 4 or 5 where he basically Cassian shot one of his own soldiers because he saw Bix's face, and it's just like, we're not going to let him talk to the Empire. But also, Luthen played everything very close to the chest. It's one of those things. I mean, it's one of the things that got Cassian in trouble in the first 3 episodes was because they didn't know who he was. They didn't know who he was connected to. Like, Maya kind of knew, but the rest of the team didn't, because everything needed to be compartmentalized in case someone did that. Whereas as you got bigger with the rebellion, you got, Organic became more involved. It was like, hey, we're setting up this base. There's protocols. There needs to be trust. There needs to be those kind of things. And Luthen's still off on the side, like, I still got my own game running here. I'll help you and I'll support you, but you don't get to see all my cards. Like, I'm still kind of doing this my own way. And so, yeah, there's definitely some frustration, even though he helped build it, As Clea says, like, this is, changes her mind of like, oh my goodness, we created this.
Well, it's interesting though, because like, you can see the pivot that Luthen makes, because in my estimation, his most treasured, outside of Clea, his most treasured like thing in his sphere of influence was Lonnie.
Oh yeah.
And everything was built to protect that source, and right down to ending that source.
Yeah. Which
was devastating, because you really empathize with Lonnie, with his plight. But once he does that, there's a big change, a big pivot in Luthen, and he's much more comfortable being reckless, because that source is gone. There's no one inside ISB anymore that he has. All he has is information that this system he's built has somehow garnered him. And so you can see the character just be much more reckless. It makes sense why he just allows Deidre to roll into the gallery and doesn't have any contingency to try to escape. By that point, he's like, oh, forget it. Like, I'm not gonna.
Well, and he has that great line, and he goes, "The rebellion's gone. It's flown away." It's
the other great line is like, she's like, is anything fake in here? And he's only 2 things in the gallery that aren't what they
questionable,
of questionable.
And he shows her one.
Subtext is just so nice.
Yeah, that whole, like, because they both know what they're talking about. They're still playing the game. And then when she drops the Starpath unit in, he's just like, it's so good. That callback was really nice too, of bringing that, like, because she, it's definitely something that Deidre would do, because she was so focused on Axis. That was her, like, she even talks about it, even though when she was, her main focus was Ghorman. Really, Ghorman was just what she was doing in the daytime, why she could still focus on trying to find Axis, and why she kept reading those reports that she was CC'd on that she should not have been CC'd on, and kept those. And, when she talks about, like, this is how I found it. And it's just, it's so funny. Like, just crazy. But I'm going to go to party, guys, because I just thought of another quote that he does that I absolutely love, and there's a fun story. But the one where he's talking with Hirt, gives Hirt and Young the kind of dealing with the Imperial Navy intelligence, because Dr. Gorst is going to be used with them as well, and Hirt's like, it's an honor, sir. And he's just like, calibrate your enthusiasm, and I was just like, absolutely love it. And someone in an interview asked Tony Gilroy, like, where did they come from? And he goes, oh, I just thought of Curb Your Enthusiasm and just changed it. It just was like it's like Larry David gave it to me, basically, with the name of the show. So I was like, that's fantastic, because that's the new phrase, is calibrate your enthusiasm. But okay, but going back to the Young, he is the unsung hero of the rebellion. Like, so much was saved, so much was done. And also, like, a lot of people say, like, none of this really matters, because in Rogue One, Jyn Erso shows up, and and Galen has been working on the Star Flaw for decades, and then gets that information to Saw, right? That would have still happened even without Young. But kind of what you said is, would the rebellion have been so willing to believe this information had they not already gotten some other information from a separate source about the Death Star.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Or at least the show makes that argument.
Yeah. And so that's, I mean, and I would agree with it. Like, I think it primes the rebellion to go, maybe this is real. We need to put forces towards it, or put.
I mean, it lines up with the way, like, early intelligence, like the OSS and stuff, and, you know, CIA, other intelligence services, the way they have to corroborate data. It lines up with the same thing. You can't just take one source and then plan operations around it. Like, that's because the enemy's potentially feeding you bad data. And I think that's maybe the show didn't do quite as good a job as conveying that, of like, what if this is some sort of, I think it's briefly mentioned, but like, what if this is just purposeful bad intel coming from ISB filtering through our ranks to get us to basically reveal Yavin. And I think that was a legitimate concern. I don't know that that was conveyed like real eloquently and clearly enough to the viewer, at least in my first viewing, like that was the main concern, that if they act on this stuff, they're going to reveal the base they've been planning for forever. So, which still didn't make sense to me, that it's like you have this many people on Yavin coming and going, like,
yeah,
there wouldn't be one person that like defects and just reveals.
But all that matters is they got Melshi. He's back.
And the blaster.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
Which is great, because I didn't put together the fact that he was actually in Rogue One, and so when we watched it, I was like, "Oh my goodness, there's Melshi! What the heck? This is fantastic!" So that was amazing callback. And I mean, I know the original series was supposed to be just Andor and K2 going on missions together.
Yeah. Yep.
But I got a little bit of that when K2, Andor, and Melshi are playing.
Yeah.
Tiles with each other or whatever. So it's like, I'm like, this is just a little joy, like, amazing. But so you and I kind of had that conversation when I sent you that interview with Gilroy. He talks about what could have been the Andor series of like 5 years of it, of essentially it's just K2 and Andor going on missions for the rebellion leading up to Rogue One.
It basically would have been Knight Rider.
Yeah.
It basically would have been the Michael Knight Kit dynamic. That's what you'd get with a serial with Andor and K2 roaming around. It'd have been fun for probably a season, and then Tony was right. After that, you run out of real estate. Like what? Yeah.
Well, I mean, look at the Mandalorian. That the Mandalorian is the exact thing that he was trying to prevent.
Yes,
is you had that runway of season 1, season 2 worked because that story arc, but then you get to season 3, you're like, we can't really hide this. Like how does this really work when it's not about finding where this guy is supposed to be? You know, and I'm still frustrated because they did find where he was supposed to be and then changed it all. And so that was a bummer.
It was.
But I mean, that's what he was just talking. Like, you can't hide K2. You can't put a wig on him. You can't put a trench coat. Yeah. Okay, Kenobi. But like, you can't do these things, and he's got to stay in the ship. You know, like, I mean, that's what was happening. Like in Rogue One, he stays in the ship. Heck, when they go to Coruscant to save Clea, he stays on the ship, which then you get that amazing hallway scene of him showing up.
It's tremendous. I've cleared a path.
The fact that he carries Hirt's body, lifeless body, as a shield. So originally they had an episode of how Andor and K2 meet that was different than what's actually in the show. It was going to be his own episode, like kind of a standalone, didn't really connect in an arc, but it was basically going to be a horror film essentially, of like the KX droids going after Andor or whatever, and it's like it's much more like monster based than what we actually even get. So my goodness, like, but I'm still happy with how we got it, even for a short amount of time that we got K2 with Alan Tudyk as K2, who's just absolutely brilliant.
I think less is more in that case.
Yeah.
Especially how much they lean into it in Rogue One.
Yeah. Well, and even just in the 2 episodes he is, I mean, like K2 is, the jokes fly. There's more jokes in the last 2 episodes of, or, you know, last 3 episodes, last 2 episodes of Andor than are in probably the entire series combined.
What is it he says is like waking you up is so confusing, or waking humans up is always so confusing.
Or he's just like, do you know how, like when they're first leaving Yavin, he's like, do you know how many regulations we've broken? He's like, turn off the radio. He's just like, 17. Click. 18.
18.
Just small. But again, it's brilliant. Alan Tudyk is absolutely stunning as an actor and brilliant as there's a fun story that I was listening to them, both Diego and Alan, talking about it, and Alan says when he gets to set his trailer, it says old friend on the trailer as opposed to his name, so people don't know. But then Diego goes, yeah, you know what's on my trailer? Like, it says Carlos for my trailer. It's just like, come on, really? We couldn't think of anything better or anything different?
Well, I just saw a clip today where Tudyk was saying that in Rogue One, the scene where K2 slaps Cassian, if you slow it down, you can see Diego laughing. Yeah.
It's true. We watched it. I pointed out to Laura. I was like, okay, let's watch this. Let's rewind it and watch this. And you can just see he's just covering his face the entire time.
Yeah.
Because he's just breaking out. Because that was improvised. It was not not in the script. So, all right. I love the show. I do. It is easily made this. So it hasn't made my top spot yet. And there's a little bit going for it since it's Star Wars. But this has easily gotten into probably my number 2 spot of best TV shows of all time. And a lot of people want to talk about how slow it is, character development, but I want to go into, like, everyone talks about how amazing Game of Thrones is, right? Like, they're all like, it's this amazing show, one of the best ever to happen. And I'm like, do you know how many slow episodes there were when you were watching? Like, especially from, like, week to week of going through the seasons where you didn't have anything happen. I mean, there's a reason why they had boobs every 5 minutes on screen, was to keep your attention of what's going on. Like in Game of Thrones, there's so much exposition, there's so much talking going on with not a lot of action, that, like, it was a slow show, especially those first couple seasons. Like, I don't understand.
Game of Thrones' issue was how it ended.
Well, yeah, I mean that too, but
that's where this show is its strength. And I'm a believer that how a show or a movie ends is I wouldn't say it's the most important. It's not everything, right? But it's more than something. And this show ended better than I could have ever predicted. The shot of Bix wrecked me.
Yeah.
Absolutely wrecked me. I was not prepared for it. I didn't know that's the direction they were going to go in. And it wrecked me, and I was super satisfied, all rolled into one, and was like, that's incredible. That's incredible. But yeah, Game of Thrones, just the last 2 seasons of that show were an absolute train wreck. So it was charting to become one of the greats, but it
ruined it. Yeah.
It ruined it. So, like, and that's the risk when you allowed a show to kind of go for too long. Obviously, this wasn't really ever at risk for going too long. What we got maybe went too short, but, like, that just leaves you wanting more. And so I think that's a fabulous place to leave a piece of television, is wanting more of it. I do. I think they stuck the landing. And that was what ultimately I was, like, evaluating the second season on. I can complain all I want from that I wasn't enthralled continually with the first half of the season, but where they took me to, I mean, hats off.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The last 5, especially the last 5 episodes, just are works of art, each and every one of them.
Yeah. I did want to mention something really quick with I was kind of noticing the color grade on this show, and it's not super strong. And it wasn't super strong in season 1 either. And I love that about it. It's a great image. It's got a little bit of stylization. There's some adjustments they make, it's a cooler looking show. There's less saturation, but the show is just exquisitely shot, exquisitely lit, and they just let the production design and the costumes and the sets speak for themselves, and it doesn't have a real strong grade sitting on top of it. As a colorist, I'm telling you, like the colorist is fantastic. The work is superb, but they're only adding like another 10% to what already existed in camera. And I really like that about the show. They don't, and Rogue One's the same way. It doesn't lean heavily on like a really stylized image. It's clean, it's believable, it feels lived in. This hits all cylinders as far as what I want in a digitally shot image, right? Because this isn't, I don't think they shoot film for this show.
No, they don't.
It's digital. But it doesn't have an overly clean digital look to it. Ghorman maybe was a little more pristine than I expected it to be, but like you said, it's the clothing capital, so it's like, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so I thought ending on Bix was epic and just, like you said, wrecked me. I also wanted to like scream and yell at all the people who in episode 9 were complaining like this makes no sense why Bix would leave Andor. This is dumb. This is stupid, blah, 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 blah. And I'm just like, the show isn't done yet. And I felt like the payoff of like this gave him more credence why she left. She knew he needed to do some stuff. She knew that if he was aware that she was pregnant with his child, that he would immediately left the rebellion. Like he was already talking about that. Like it just made sense. It was like, this is why people like finish watching the show before you critique it.
But it does make his death at the end of
so much
Rogue
tougher.
One even rougher.
Yeah.
But in some ways, there's a hopeful element to it as well, that it's like, I don't want to get too philosophical, but it definitely would lend credence to like life after death kind of deal for him as a character, and Bix making that sacrifice.
Yeah. He probably turns into some midichlorians and sorry, that was the fetch.
Master, what are midichlorians? Little part of me died the first time I saw that in the theater.
Me too. I was not happy. It was like, how far we have fallen.
Well, Anakin, when we visit the Red Cross later, they're going to ask what your midichlorian count is when you go to donate. Your midichlorians and your A1C. Those are going to be the numbers they're going to want.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. No.
See, and that's the problem with this show. It's just, it's ruined. The fan base is just spoiled and ruined for a whole heap of Star Wars content that it's just like, it's too easy to be like, oh, it's not as good as Andor. And I don't allow I refuse to allow myself to get to that point, because I've said it before, I'll say it again. There's pretty much 3 audiences working right now in tandem when it comes to Star Wars content. Original trilogy, prequel, sequel. Yeah. And then there's kind of people that float between them. And Disney's kind of made it clear they're trying to make content for all 3 audiences. So you just kind of have to stick with what you like and ignore the rest.
I will say, and I'm going to put this recommendation too, like you can have quality and not have to be the level of seriousness that Andor is to do good Star Wars. Like I think Skeleton Crew was really good.
I've started it. I'm not done with it, but yeah.
And that's something you can watch with Laura. Like I think that would be an easy vehicle to get her into Star Wars, or more into Star Wars or something.
Back
that you
in,
can connect.
because this is my daughter famously when she was like 3, is Darth Vader at Disney World, and it's like, and she's like, I want to see him and hug him, and I'm like, I don't know if old Vader accepts hugs or not, but yeah.
No, so like I tell people like I'm looking for a level of quality in the story, in the dialogue, in the conflict, in how it looks, how it's portrayed. Like that's what I'm looking for. Like tell me a story that could fit anywhere or elsewhere. It doesn't have to be in Star Wars, and that Star Wars is just the setting it's in. I don't want a Star Wars show. I want a show that happens in Star Wars, universe. Yeah. And that's, I think, the difference. That's
That's what Gilroy understands.
Yeah, it's
I
like
think he just treats it as a setting rather than
the impetus of
like it doesn't. The fact that it's Star Wars doesn't necessarily motivate characters to do certain things. I feel like there's other shows that's like, well, the character needs to do this because it's Star Wars.
Yeah. And
it's an easy trap to fall into.
And I think for me, the big thing is like, everyone's like, well, there's no Jedi, so it's not really Star Wars. And I'm like, yeah, but like, really, you don't have much in the way of Jedi in the original trilogy either. I mean, you have Luke, and he's not really a Jedi until maybe the end of Empire, beginning of Return. You know, I mean, like, yeah, he's got a lightsaber. And
well, according to Yoda, he wasn't.
Yeah. So it's one of those things of just like, you know, I like the less is more when it comes to the Force and to the Jedi. Like, it feels more mystical, feels more special. Yes. But like, if everyone's a Jedi, it's kind of like, if everyone's special, no one's special. And like, if everyone's a Jedi, then who cares? Like, this is, you know, like, this no longer interests me about what they're doing. Like, give me the life of regular people. So
yeah.
But
yeah, it reveals how rare like Vader is. Like, what he is just uncommon, and there's a mystique to him because he doesn't walk around always using the Force. So it's like, yeah, I don't know.
Maybe.
We'll see where they go.
Yeah, see what happens next with it. And by the way, Disney, I do not need a Skeleton Crew season 2. It's good. Just one season. That's good. That's done. We're done. Let's move on. Do something different.
Yep.
I don't need the Clea Chronicles. I don't need the documentary series of Life in Narkina 5 with Deidre.
I think that's Orange is the New Black. Is probably it's basically what that show. I mean,
that's great. Yeah. That's fantastic. I love it.
She's even blonde, like the main character. That
it works.
I think we've already watched that. I don't think they need to make that. But
let's move on. Well, I could continue talking about this show for a while, but I think we've hit a good point. Unless there's anything else that you want to bring up that we haven't talked about.
We certainly could. It's very dense, and you know, if we're motivated to do so, maybe we revisit it down line. But I'm sure we'll end up touching on it as we're apt to do, discussing other things. But now it's not hanging out there, and it's two brilliant seasons of, I hate to even call it television, man. It's extended movies, cinema. It's cinema. So no, it's tremendous, and we're lucky to have, I don't know, this might mark a decided end to the streaming wars kind of content of that premium content. This seems like the streamers are going to stop spending this much money because they were in this race to, I mean, we benefited with Andor and Game of Thrones and a couple other shows where we were the beneficiaries in this race to acquire subscribers. And now they have us. And after COVID, they realized
they don't need them.
They could stop making a bunch of new content, and we wouldn't cancel our subscriptions. So, unfortunately, like, this stuff's going to become, I think, rare.
Well, I'm hoping they go the way of quality instead of quantity, but I'm nervous that they're not.
If they won't, then I think we will do what they were worried about, which is cancel. So, ball's in their court, but we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
You got anything else?
No, I do not. So,
well, we appreciate you listening to this very much an extended episode, but I think the content in the show warranted it, and we're always gonna go long talking Andor.
Oh, we are.
So I know we have the original trilogy hanging out there, and it's like kind of been on the back burner, and we'll probably get to that sooner rather than later. Hopefully we have something new to add to the conversation with something like that. But always love talking some Star Wars on Cinema A to B, and we appreciate you tuning in.
Thanks, everybody.